I'm like, I mean, you're actually talking to a woman who's done this job.
Hi, woman here.
There was a picture of some guy. It was a picture on this guy's resume. He was an older guy, and he had this really he was really
Oh, he looked
obviously fake
like
tanned, and he had a really bad comb over that started from here to here. And you open it and you go, "What in the Fabio?"
going on here?
Like shirt off, not like a button up over a t-shirt or something.
No,
Like man
like
titties and all.
nips out.
Oh, yeah.
Reach the nips, okay? I have the right to defend myself, and I have the right to say this isn't gonna fucking fly. Like the internet.
Like the internet.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Fuck Your Podcast. I'm Emma Pardo.
And I'm Katy Martin. And on today's episode, we have Emily Pedroli, one of our very, very good friends and team members and recruiting expert. So we're going to talk about all kinds of fun stuff. This episode really wanted to talk about like the good and the bad, the good, the bad, and the ugly of recruiting. Because it's pretty vast. And Emma's going to be like, I'm just going to sit here and listen while you guys talk. Because Emily and I could probably talk and bitch about recruiting for a good few hours.
Oh, yeah.
Like recruiting wise, I probably started recruiting in like 2011. And it was just, it was just recruiting and hiring for the companies that I work for. And then I did it more full-time, as needed. Then in 2013, the roofing company that I worked for, I did all the recruiting and hiring until we hired a recruiter. So that was the first place that I worked that had a specific recruiter. And then, as time progressed on around 2016, 17, I started doing it in the capacity that we do it now, where it's more like an agency. So tell us a little bit of background, as far as when you got into it.
Yeah, so professionally speaking, it was probably around the same time you did, actually. But then going back to like personally, I knew I should be a recruiter because I would recruit people in friend groups. It's like everyone would be recruited by Emily, and I introduced everyone, and it was just super fun to see people come together. And then oh gosh, in my sorority in college was how I was introduced to recruiting. I didn't really know about it professionally. I mean, you're going through college, it's not really an option. They're doctor, lawyer, sales, they don't know. So I got introduced to it through an agency setting in 2018. And that was a hiring agency. It was more so staffing, which I very quickly discovered the difference between staffing and I guess recruiting, hiring. It can be pretty different, right, especially in agency to then corporate. And then what we do now, which is working with clients directly, doing direct hires. But it started off with the pretty typical, kind of like a sweatshop of recruiting.
Yeah.
Is how I described it. It definitely very quickly earned my stripes being in that environment because it was intense. We were encouraged to, find people who were working full-time jobs and get them to quit and start a contract role. Just about all of our positions were contracted. But over there, I worked in the professional division, and I did a lot of healthcare, did some HR, really anything under the professional services, as opposed to, warehouse, scientific, clinical things like that. So yeah, I've been doing it since about 2018 or so.
Yeah, and recruiting, the thing about I'd say that what makes a really good recruiter and why you're so good at it is because you're not really intimidated by too many positions, and you've just got to be open to the hunt and the challenge, finding the right people, and at some point just saying, hey, you're gonna talk to me one way or another.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I've talked to so many different people. I mean, it started off with, very entry level positions. And then, a few months in, I went through recruiter 2 training and was working on more high up administrator roles. And then when we were at our previous company, I was doing like VP of sales and like, and all over the place. The hardest one I think to date that I've done, it's not because of the like level of like seniority. It's all those tech roles. I don't speak that language at all. Like, it's the coders and the programmers and knowing these different languages and softwares. That is like a whole other language. Have you done work with that type
No,
of
I've
work?
almost like intentionally avoided it.
Yeah.
Just because one, it's like, I mean, I consider myself pretty tech savvy, but if you're talking about like tech recruiters, they are looking for these needles in a haystack. Like a lot of companies, when they have to hire a tech recruiter, they're trying to find this very specialized position, like super, super specialized position for a software that we've probably never heard of, that or some sort of coding method, or like you said, a language, like, getting somebody who's a specialist in this type of code language. And we're just like, yeah, you could tell me that you know all this stuff and I have no way to decipher, because
it's literally like acronyms left and right. I'm like, I swear it makes me feel dyslexic.
And they're also not like the type of people that there's a whole lot of personality to read. So like a lot of the stuff that we
I'm
do
engaged to one.
So like is a lot of things we do as recruiters, as far as like picking up on tonality and like on Zoom calls and face-to-face calls, like picking up on body language, like as far as catching if somebody's being honest or if they're exaggerating or, things like that. Like you don't get that with certain personality types. So no, I've avoided tech recruiting. One thing that I like, so the industry that we've worked in, at least the last few years together, home service companies, roofing companies, things like that. And there's a lot of places out there that they think recruiting is you just have like this magical stable of unicorns that are just ready to like plug and play into their company. Like, hey, I'm going to pay you some money. Can you send me somebody who can start Monday? And that's not realistic unless you're in the world of staffing.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing that a lot of people, I hate saying it, but even the place we worked before would advertise, hey, we have closers ready to work. And that's just not the case. Like a recruiting agency is just not the same as like staffing, like where you can get somebody in. And typically
it's body versus quality too in that instance. Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Two things that I talk to clients about, especially if they reach out to me for recruiting or for help hiring, I typically will talk about, okay, are you hiring consistently for the same position? And there are some positions that are more naturally higher turnover than other positions. And sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with the company. Like that doesn't mean the company's bad. It doesn't mean there's like a bad environment. It's just the nature of the position.
And the people who are in that position, like salespeople, always bigger, better, greener pastures. Like,
yep, 100%. So, and I've had the same thing. I've worked with some painting companies where they hire painters, because they're really busy. So you just certain tradesmen, certain skilled labor, warehouse type of positions, sales of different levels, even like they don't even have to be entry level sales. Sometimes they're like medium and higher level advanced sales positions. It still has higher turnover. It's just the numbers don't lie. Yeah. So that's one thing that I try to convey to somebody, where I'm like, there's a huge difference between recruiting and staffing. And if you have a higher turnover position, like a high volume position, it's probably not going to make sense, and it's not going to make financial sense for you to hire me to recruit for that, because I'm going to charge you a pretty big fee for that one hire. And that person might only be there 8 months, might be there a year and a half. And so your money's better spent either figuring out how to master your own recruiting process, or develop your own recruiting process, or hire somebody just to do recruiting for you. Like it would be a small fortune if they paid real recruiters, like with what we do, to hire your like high turnover position. So that's the way that it's kind of how we differentiate like qualifying people. It's like, not that I can't help you, it's just I have a different service that might make better sense for you.
Yeah. And I think that's how we as recruiters like can be differentiated from other recruiters in the market who have more of a negative, there's more of a negative stigma there, because a lot of other recruiters, they're going to say, I don't care if there's high turnover, you're going to pay me this, it is what it is. And they're not going to be
Right.
looking out for the client's
That's
best interest.
Yep.
So I mean, when we hear that and it's like, oh, this probably doesn't make sense financially for you, doesn't make sense for our time. Like, this is not going to be a symbiotic relationship. Any like way you hash it out, it's probably not best to do it. I'm sure there's been instances too where it's like, hey, if it's not going to work out, like we can still talk about like your processes and like what's going on, maybe help you build out a process. And I think that's cool to also have that consultative nature and like do the coaching and consulting. And when you've identified it's not best to go through with recruiting for this, there's still a way to help. And I think especially you coming at it from, I just want to help people. And I have that mentality. I know Emma has that mentality. We get a lot of reach from that. And I mean, it's so cool to see, people be receptive to different information too.
Yeah. The one thing that I like, Emma, this would probably begin that you've not done a ton of recruiting,
No.
like the active recruiting, right? Like the stuff that Emma
Right.
and I do every single day. But we're growing, the company's growing. We might be hiring slower than some other organizations, but it just is what it is. It's just where we're at. But you're going to start having more of a hand in the hiring process, as far as bringing on more people to the team. But
And I don't know why that gives me, like, being untrained to that, it gives me such anxiety to do.
that
Like,
goes to everybody.
it's crazy because I'm just like, I know how I can do something. I don't know how somebody else could be doing something. So like, it's all about the trust, and it's hard to trust somebody based on their answers in an interview, because I've also been that person in the interview that's like, I've done X amount of years of this and I'm so driven and I never get lazy, and like this whole like hype yourself up.
Yeah.
And to an extent it's true, kind of over exaggerated, but then who's to say that there isn't some Joe Schmo who's like overqualified, gets the job, and then you have to deal with him being completely underqualified. I don't know. That's the part that gives me anxiety, is going, I really don't want to waste my time on somebody that's gonna give me a headache.
Yeah. And it's hard because it is an art, it is a science, there's math to it of like how you best qualify these candidates on the front end to ensure. There's always going to be the bad hire. It happens to everyone, no matter what level you're hiring for, what industry, who's doing the hiring, it happens. But there are definitely certain ways where you can qualify them as thoroughly as possible on the front end. Some of my approaches, of course, I'm very professional when talking to candidates, but I'm not stuffy. I'm not robotic. I like to really engage in conversation. And I really try to note what we're talking about on the front end of the conversation, where they're a little bit more uptight, maybe a little bit more nervous. And they're kind of like rattling off like, these are my skill sets and I've done this and I have X amount of experience. And then once I've kind of like peeled back the layer and see them relax a little bit more, I'll kind of revisit the same things, the same topics, but from a different angle. And a lot of the time it'll uncover a little bit more truth or accuracy through that type of conversation flow.
You gotta get the guard down, like, which is basically what you're doing.
I know. And I'm sure we've all been in interviews before where it's like they're reading off of a list. It is so impersonable, or they don't care about you at all. It's robotic, it's uncomfortable, it's cold, and you're not really going to find any genuine information that way. They're just basically going to be reading back their resume to you, which I hope you can just read. Hopefully you can read. So, but with that, it's nice because I've had people talk to me about like on interviews at the end of it, they're like, it was really great talking with you. I enjoyed this call today. Because they broke down their walls, or I broke down their walls, they opened up and I got more accurate information from them that way.
What you said about giving you anxiety about like all of that, every single business owner has that. I've not talked to a single If anybody listening to this podcast owns a business and you've not felt this way, you're a liar.
I think what's so crazy why I get the anxiety is the only like hiring I've seen internally was from the bowling alley. It was like you'd see people come in, they'd go into the office, they'd have an interview with my mom and stepdad, and then they'd leave. And my mom and stepdad always seem so confident about, they're either a turd or they're gonna get hired. I mean, it's a bowling alley job. But what's so crazy is that most of the people that they like, I don't think they've ever hired someone and been like, oh boy, here we go, and it just they don't seem to have, they come off like they don't have the anxiety about it. So that's where I'm like, how do you, like, that's what I've witnessed before. And then me actually doing it, I'm like,
well, Emma, remember when we had the event in February and you kept saying how nervous you were and you could not tell at all.
No.
Like, I mean, it's one of those things. It's just, even me, like, there's sometimes I'm like, I'm not like, please don't answer. But there's times where I'm like, man, I really don't feel like I'm on my game today. Let's see how this goes.
But also at the same time, like, the more I think of it is I was the front desk girl at the bowling alley. I was the manager, so I would be the one talking to everybody, but I'd also be technically recruiting in a sense for leagues.
Sure.
I'd like make the phone calls to like people in the community, like, hey, do you want to sign up for a league? And I guess I do have like some experience. The more I think about
calling.
Very informal, but it's not calling people for a job. It's calling people to come spend money at our bowling alley. But I would always get the anxiety, like, please let me just leave a voicemail. I'd rather just leave a voicemail.
But that's sales. So not to discount what recruiters do by any means, because it's a grind, right? And there is the critical thinking and the planning and the strategy and everything on the front side. But the thing that I try to tell business owners when they freak out because they're like, I have no idea how to hire. I'm like, yeah, you probably do, because it's just like sales and marketing. It's very, very similar, and they probably know how to do that. Recruiting is one of those things that everybody avoids it till they have to do it. It's like, I'm not going to do it, but now I have to. Like, I have the need. And then they'll act out of desperation. I think that's where most bad hires come from. Yeah, but like that whole like the anxiety, like you talk about, or something. Like, I have business owners that'll come to me and be like, I have no idea how to hire. Like, really, how many people are on your team? Well, I have 17 people on my team. Well, you obviously hired there. So let's take what works and see if we can make it more efficient. But it's but if you run a business and you know how to market your business and you know how to sell whatever it is that you sell, your product or your service, if you know how to market it and you know how to sell it, then you would be surprised. It's small adjustments to recruit and to hire. Like, it's just it's just positioning. But it's, if you can market and you can market your company and you can sell your service, then you can recruit people, because the process is damn near the same. Like, they're almost identical. Like, if you laid out the recruiting process, like the things that we do, Emily, like on a daily basis, and your pipeline, like how you manage a candidate pipeline, it's no different than how you generate leads and manage a sales pipeline for your company. It's so similar, like so similar.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that also kind of intimidates people when they're like, oh, it's like sales, but the big difference is like instead of a product or a service, it's like a person, and a person is the most unreliable product of anything you could sell. So I think that's another reason people are like, oh man, I really don't want to do this. I remember when we had our, event in February and I got up to speak and I was like, okay, well, who in here like actually enjoys recruiting? One person raised their hand.
One person.
I was like, well, I'll have a job forever. But
it can be a grind, and there's not really like a magical pill. Like, you just have to understand the pieces that are going to get you closer to what you want. So, understanding the qualifications, understanding the qualifications you're looking for. And really the hardest part is knowing where to go look. I think that's where most people don't know, like the resources that are out there to recruit and the more modern techniques that you could utilize to recruit. There's a software that I demoed today that we're going to be able to utilize for recruiting. and it's a data mining software, but we can target a particular industry and a particular level. So, and like actually target people that are still employed and get way more reliable info than like what we've been able to get. So that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize. There's so many tools out there and they don't really understand headhunting, but it's like if you told a roofing company, well, you know how to knock doors, right? Yep. So how do you get started doing that? Well, I find an area and I qualify it. Great. So I do a search and I qualify the people. Then I just tap them until they talk to me. It's really not any different. I mean, it sounds like I'm oversimplifying what we do, which I'm not trying to take away what we do, but it's like you said, before 2018, you didn't know how to do it. Before, you know, a lot of the methods we use now before 2018, I didn't know how to do. So it can be learned. It's just more about the persistence. And then, so if you're going to outsource recruiting, you're just basically leveraging the money that you're paying somebody to do it to buy back your time.
Yeah.
So what's the craziest? I can think of a couple off the top of my head really fast. Like what's one of the craziest candidate experiences that you've had?
Oh my God.
The Fabio. Remember that one, the Fabio? There was
the man who took his shirt off in his interview with me.
No.
Oh.
No.
Wait, do I not know that one?
There was a picture of some guy. It was a picture on this guy's resume. He was an older guy and he had this really he was really
he looked
obviously
like
fake tanned, and he had a really bad comb over that started from here to here. And you open it and you go, what in the Fabio?
What's going on here? I mean, I don't think I ended up talking to him though, but yeah.
No.
I know everyone's like, headshots don't belong on a thing. Like you can do a nice professional headshot on a resume. It's not that big of a deal, but like, let it be a professional picture.
Right.
Not like your Tinder picture or a mugshot. I swear I've seen people who.
Man. Well, other ones in other countries kind of look like mugshots, but there's certain cultures where putting your headshot on your resume is pretty standard.
Yeah. I did get a lot of those with especially a lot of the like more like tech roles.
Yeah.
People who were like looking to come over here. And no one was smiling in those. So I found out very quickly that was also, I guess, a cultural thing is like being professional, being serious.
Right.
But no, I think one of the wilder ones was, I had an interview for I think this was a sales role that I was working on, and it was a Google Meet, so camera on, everything like that. And he took his shirt off in the middle of us talking.
Like nothing under it?
What did you even do? Like, what was your reaction?
Like it's like bare chested?
Yes.
Like shirt off, not like a button up over a t-shirt or something.
No,
like man titties and all?
Nips out. Reach the nip, okay? And I was like, he's happening. At first, I like didn't say something for a moment because I was just like like short circuiting. Like, what the hell is happening?
So what prompted him to take his shirt off? Was it something like, did he say anything about taking his shirt off? Like, I'm just so confused. He just takes his shirt off.
He was like, he didn't really like it was basically like he was giving me time in passing of him doing something. It was like, yeah, whatever. And then like he was just like, God, doing things. I was like, and I eventually was just like, do we need to talk another time, because this is not quite appropriate for this scenario. That was weird. I don't know. I've been cussed out. I've had people who were threatening to look up where I live.
Yeah, I've had that kind of stuff a lot in messages too. They like, people think like it's a generational thing, like where they feel it's way more invasive to get a text message and get super.
Where'd you get my number?
Yeah, where'd you get my number?
The internet?
Like the internet. That's
I know.
Crazy to me. Like people are just like, oh, you don't do that. Like you don't do things like that. Like that's your social security number. I'm like, I can find anything out about you that I want on the internet.
Hold on. There was a text I got and I read it to Christian the other day because it was so crazy. Hold on. I have to find, it was something. Oh, here it is. I would never take a job for you. 3 exclamation points, all caps, ever. 4 exclamation points. Now scoot your butt out of my life. Have a good day. Thank you. Lowercase uppercase. I go, good God, that was dramatic. I'm just
so
like,
funny.
like they don't, I guess a lot of people don't realize that it's a real person on the other line. So
Yeah.
I like to let them know.
Like I'm actually reading this in real time and responding in real time.
And then I love to go and then make sure I add them on LinkedIn after that.
That's funny.
I'm like, howdy ho.
Now you have to look me in the face.
I know. Like, you want to do that again?
You don't like, it's like dealing with the general public. And I mean, you got to filter through some of that nonsense. And I think it's what keeps it interesting. I've had the guy who sent me a straight up dick pic on LinkedIn and then was like, "Oh wait, I really do need a job." I'm like, "Boy, you just blew it, buddy."
Oh my God.
Kind of job. Like,
yeah, like I was actually talking.
Please tell me this was unsolicited.
Well, yeah, it's not like
Katie asked for it.
Oh, sure.
Part
Hey,
of the
buddy,
screening
hey, buddy,
process.
I'm looking for a project manager in Minneapolis. By the way, can you show me what you're packing? Like, that's not part of the interview process. So yeah, he did. He sent me a dick pic through Messenger. Like, wasn't even like to my phone. It was through.
Oh my God, I was just choked on my water.
It was through LinkedIn Messenger, and I was like, come on. And
I remember Maddie sent us the Snapchat. She's like, this was somebody's resume, and she opens it up, and the first, like, the full page, front page of this resume is this guy's, like, it's a selfie. Yeah. It's not even like it's like a little headshot in the corner. It was the full page. And she's like, I don't know what to do.
I think Maddie had a candidate one time where Emily, you were talking about like the professional pictures. I'm pretty sure it was a female candidate, and she I can't remember the position. Like if it was a creative position, maybe she thought this was like, it was either a creative or a sales position. But I mean, it was like the whole backwards pose, like showing the butt, kind of like a full body picture off to the left, like in the left margin of her resume.
People, do better.
Yeah.
So like I would honestly just publicly laugh at them. I couldn't do it. I couldn't be a recruiter because I'd be like, you have mental issues to work out.
Here's the thing, and I guess like there's some of it you just have to laugh about. And most of, like, I've had people get super shitty with me. And again, it's, if you reach out to someone unsolicited as a headhunter, you should probably expect not all your responses are going to be positive.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you got to let that roll off your back. It can wear on you over time. Like especially if it's 8 hours of that, like it can wear on you a little bit. But I mean, you got to have a positive outlook. You got to like to talk to people. You got to think in general, I'm going into this hoping people are going to be nice and that people are going to be kind and respectful. And the only time that I've ever really flipped shit, there's two instances. One was, the one I didn't really flip out on the guy. I just said, hey, I'm no longer interested. There was a construction worker. It was a tradesman in Minneapolis. And he was talking about rooming with another project manager while they traveled for work. And he referred to the guy. He's like, well, I think the guy is gay and I don't like to room with a F word. And I was like, oh, this conversation's over. So I'm like, no, I don't really think you're going to be a fit for this role. Like,
and society, but okay.
Yeah. And he had to try to backpedal and stuff. But then the two other times were recruiters that we had on our team, Emily, where somebody treated them with a high level of disrespect.
Someone did something to me and you got involved. You were fuming, I remember. I forgot what it was exactly, but
the two that were really bad, when Austin worked for us, somebody called him the N-word, a candidate, and
so horrible.
So that ended up being like a whole team effort where we sent the information to his current employer. And the other time was somebody saying something really profane to Marissa. And it doesn't even have to be in a recruiting capacity. If you said something like that to one of my kids, to a family member, to any of my friends, or any of my employees, like those are my people. Like that's who I'm responsible for. So I ended up lighting that guy up and used our recruiting software to get his wife's phone number, to get his kids' phone number. And I'm like, if you don't apologize to her, I'm not only going to send this to your current employer, I'm going to post it on social media, and I'm going to contact your wife. Because he said something like incredibly inappropriate. I'm like, she is a mother of two. Well, at the time she was pregnant. I'm like, she is a pregnant mother of two. And at what right do you think that you have to talk to anyone like that? She reached out to you in a professional capacity to reply to your application.
Yeah.
Her application, or his application.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's the audacity. And I mean, and again, it's a small percentage, but the thing is that we talk to so many people.
Right.
Like think of how many people you talk to over the course of a year.
I probably talked to statistically 7 serial killers by now.
Oh, sure. And that's the thing, is you talk to so many people that those things come up more for us than they do to, anybody else who might just have a weird experience at a store. But man, I was at Miles. I was on the messaging that guy. I had already posted it on Facebook and tagged him in it. And he's like, you need to pull it. I'm like, you need to apologize.
When you apologize.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too.
I kept going until I got to Miles' soccer game, and I was yelling at the guy in the parking lot on the phone. And I just kept on. I'm like, you have 10 minutes. And then when she forwarded me the email that said he professionally apologized, and I understand I will not be in consideration for this role anymore, blah 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 blah. I'm like, cool, I'll delete the post. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
That's the thing too, is I think there's a lot of places and a lot of people who think that when you're disrespected in your profession and when you're being professional, if you retaliate, not even retaliate, but if you even stand up for yourself, it's unprofessional. I'm like, that is absolutely not the case. You as a professional have the right to say, I'm not going to stand for this. Not only are you no longer in consideration, but if you don't apologize, this is going to happen. There are repercussions. It's not, we're just at your service and I'm going to bite my tongue to be professional. That's not how it should go. And I really think a lot of the places, the previous, one of the previous places I worked at, it was borderline sexual harassment from a candidate. And I was told don't do anything. And this candidate just kept going and going and going. And they're like, don't say anything. I'm like, I have the right to defend myself. Right. And I have the right to say, this isn't going to fucking fly. So
that's something that I hate. I've seen too many places that are I get it, the customer's always right, or, ignore it. Or there's some things as a human that you just don't have to tolerate.
No.
And those would be instances where I would understand not tolerating it and standing yourself
you
off.
can't.
They're going to write a bad review.
There's some people that just way cross that line where it's beyond just, there's casual conversation, and then there's direct unprofessionalism. And there's some of it you can ignore, but then there's a certain level that it's no, I have to say something. And
right.
That's necessarily you have to take action to retaliate, but there's nothing wrong with just saying, no, this isn't this isn't tolerated. And again, you can just be like, hey, it's not my company. I'm not no, there's a certain moral compass, it's treat people kind. For me, it's just treat people. I wouldn't want to be I wouldn't treat you that way. Don't treat me that way.
Right.
I would respect your boundaries and just be a good person, people.
So that kind of makes me think of another, I know we've been rambling a little long today, but that makes me think of, we've worked with clients all over the United States at this point in a variety of industries, and there's also that whole common the customer's always right thing. There's a fine line that we have to toe as recruiters, because we've been asked to filter candidates. It exists, for somebody to say that this doesn't exist anymore, but we've had, the client thinks because they're not actually doing it, that they can ask a recruiter to be blatantly discriminatory.
Meaning, where we had to play hot or not with candidates before. They're like, well, they need to look like they came out of from a modeling agency. I'm like, is this a modeling position?
Right. Is this casting?
I understand the appeal of someone being attractive, like sex sells, whatever, but that's not a way to approach the candidates and to
Like
approach
that was their top qualifier too. Like, hey, all right, this person's not attractive enough. We've had that. I'm trying to think. Now I've had to dance around it a little bit, and I think I did it more. I did it subconsciously just because I knew people in different cities of different races that had a harder time in certain positions, and so I didn't really do it from a place of like, oh, I'm not going to consider a candidate of this particular like race or ethnic group. But I've had to ask a client based on the vibe that I was getting from them. I'm like, is there anything about any particular demographic of people that would struggle in this role based on where you're working? And I had one client tell me, he's like, hey, you know what? I never really thought about that. In this particular area, no. But if we were working at our other office, he's like, they would struggle. So I'm not saying that I wouldn't hire people of a particular background or color or whatnot, but I'm just saying they're going to do better in this particular location versus that location.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like, ugh, God, it makes you feel gross. It makes you feel icky. But it's like the world that we live in, because I would hate, like, the last thing I would want is, like, on my conscience, there's like, I've seen the shit that's happened in Texas. I've seen this happen in Florida after a big storm where door-to-door sales reps get a gun pulled on them. And it's like, I don't want to be the person. It's like, I placed you at the company and you got dropped into a racist hotbed. Like, I would feel terrible.
Right.
And so, like, there, but it exists, you know, like, and I've had a handful of clients where they specify something that's like, oh, like, I can't ask that. And I have only had one, and I know the guy's name and the company name and the cities that he's in, but I'm not going to say anything. Yeah. But he was very adamant about women just can't do this job. I was like, oh shit. I'm like, I mean, you're actually talking to a woman who's done this job.
Hi, woman here.
Like, well, and he's like, well, I can't trust that a woman can drive a truck and set up a 2-story ladder. And I'm like, I have met so many men who couldn't set up a 2-story ladder.
You, sir, deserve a punch in the dick.
Right. So, like, that whole thing of, when you say discrimination, like, there's a reason that it's illegal, but I mean, we've been in a position where we've had to, like, decline really talented candidates because of appearance.
This is one of the more grotesque things I've had to deal with in recruiting. So none of the places we worked together, but it was one of my more recent places I was recruiting for, told me I could not interview someone if I could not pronounce their name.
Huh.
Literally was blatantly told that. It was horrible. Did I listen? No. And I would do everything that I could as a recruiter to, you know, I mean, represent them, because I'm not just trying to like make my client happy. I'm really trying to find it's a good fit. I want the candidate happy. I want the client happy. You know, I want it to be all in harmony here. But I mean, there were times where I'm like, I had to like really overly like try to like sell this person, because I'm like, they're a great fit. Right. You can't pronounce their name, but that's a personal problem of yours. Learn how to pronounce their fucking name.
I mean, that's probably the hardest thing about recruiting. And, you know, it was refreshing. We had an initial call with a client just yesterday, not for recruiting services, but just a marketing client, where it was refreshing to see, like, he's like, hey, I'm pretty inclusive. And he had a diverse staff. And the thing that they were struggling with were the people who were a little too vocal with hateful shit on social media.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I'm like, wow, that's actually refreshing, because we tend to see in the industries that we work in, it's, you know, a little more working class, and, you know, you don't have people as near as open-minded. And there were definitely times in even building our own team at other companies where it's like, it felt gross. And, you know, me having a gay kid, to have somebody like turn their nose up when they can see that, oh no, they posted a pride flag on their Facebook profile, so we can't hire them. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
Do you remember the story I told you about the candidate who was perfect for this one role, and they were wearing a bracelet? It was a pride bracelet. Was
that the same one that was wearing fingernail polish? And
yes. Yes. And
that we all interviewed.
All loved, so qualified, was so excited for the role. I mean, would have just been such a great fit. And no, just this was the problem, and this was a problem. I'm like, and then when the final person interviewed them and asked, well, would you remove all this so you could work here? And they stood there in front of him and just go, no, I'm not going to compromise my values and my beliefs and, you know, who I am as a person to fit this mold. And honestly, that alone should have been like a green flag. Like that, what a wonderful, like, we want people like that. We should want people who aren't going to compromise and aren't going to waver. But it wasn't to their liking, and you know, it just, that it was pretty shitty to see that. And it's very frustrating as a recruiter who, you know, God, you found what you think was the unicorn, and then nope.
And I guess we just happen to see it a little bit more in the industries that we've worked in. Not that it's rampant. I wouldn't say that it's running rampant, but the thing that I don't like is like developing, and like EOS is something that I love. Like I love when we went through that. I love the parts of it that we follow, and developing like a company core values. I really do think that that's like, some people are like, oh, it's cheesy. Like, but I mean, remove the cheese factor at its core, no pun intended. It's a really positive thing. Yeah. But there's this whole group of people who you have to be so careful in recruiting, because like you can't take your core values and utilize and manipulate it to basically create a lens of discrimination.
Yeah.
And so like there's a fine line, and you got to remember, even EOS teaches, everything that I've read is like, if you have 10 core values, you might interview somebody that you only know at this moment that they fit with 7 of them. And that's okay. You got to get to know them a little bit better, or you got to get them immersed in the culture to where they buy into the core values, or they start to practice it. You know, that's like, it's like saying I'm never going to hire anybody who's never read a self-development book. Well, what if they're 22?
Yeah.
You know, like,
they don't go to what self-development is.
Right. What if they just not been exposed to it? Doesn't mean that they're opposed to it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's the dark side of recruiting that I just, and I've recruited for clients. Like you've had that, I know the industry that you're talking about as far as like the hot or not kind of thing, but I've seen the recruiting. I've worked with another individual who was looking for an executive assistant that had to check off all of the physical things, like has to be a woman, and it's like, that's reverse discrimination. First of all,
I prefer a blonde. Like,
it has to be a woman, it has to be blonde, she has to be fit, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna pretend like I didn't hear it. And as a recruiter, you're sitting there going blah 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 blah, blah. I mean, and because
that's so scary waters,
because you're now putting this in my head where I'm not looking through like the rest of my recruiting. I'm not looking through this discriminatory lens, but you just now created it, and it's like, ugh, you know, and you feel gross about it. So
but we've all been there. We as recruiters have been there. Emma, I'm sure you've been there maybe at some point too.
Some point, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, you were hired because you were just adorable.
No, actually, truth be told, Emily didn't like me at first.
Well, that's funny.
Or I don't like a lot of people at first.
Yeah, she said she didn't like me at first, but then we found out we're like twins, kind of. Pretty much. Anyway, if you want to hear a topic, need some advice, just want to chat, you could find us on Instagram at F__K your pod, or you can email me at Emma at 99 Creatives or Katy at
99 Creatives. And if you want more information about recruiting, you can.
But yeah, my email is Emily at recruitingallstars.
Recruitingallstars.com.
Like,
do you even know your own email? Are you okay?
I have a newborn. No, I'm not okay. What is
momnesia?
I have mom brain. Oh my God, it's real. But yes, Emily at recruitingallstars.com.
Yay! Awesome. Well, moral of a story: if you're looking for a job and you're going through a recruiter, don't be a fucking dick.
Don't follow strange people in foreign lands. Are we keeping that story in here?
We might as well keep that story in. Anyway, okay, bye.
Adios.